Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for another week. And this week we're doing probably our most timely album, in that we're doing something that was just released last week when we do the self-titled album from Helloween. I'm very much looking forward to this, but before we jump in, how are you doing, bud?
It's been a very interesting week of ups and downs between watching the Islanders play in the third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, get absolutely shellacked, and then come back and win in overtime down 2-0. And then on top of that, had two power outages, including the most recent one that the power came back on about 15 minutes ago. So, but I'm feeling good. This album definitely helped because I listened to it all week, and I can't wait to talk about it. And I think you would agree with me in saying that this is something we never thought we'd be able to hear going back to 1998 or so when we became huge fans of this band. This is something that we just never thought would be possible.
It was a really good choice just because of the excitement factor. I was curious to see if it was going to live up to these immense expectations that I have for the album, but we'll get to that in a second. I'll tell you this: I listened to the album so much that I really didn't listen to very much else this week, and for me, that's kind of a bit of an anomaly. There's just one album that I really thought I should recommend because I peek behind the curtain. It's Thursday night. We've been listening to this nonstop since it came out, or at least I started listening to it over the weekend. In between the basically listens, I listened to one other disc by a band called Seventh Dimension. They're a 5-piece outfit from Stockholm, Sweden, and they play really awesome prog metal, kind of in the vein of a Haken, if you will. Very, very catchy and melodic stuff. I think you especially will enjoy this, but they're not really... I hadn't heard of them. Apparently, this is their fourth album. It's called Black Sky. It came out just a couple of days ago, I guess. I had never heard of these guys. I have to go check out the old stuff. Really, really good. And what really stuck out to me was the fact that you had this great prog metal, but with a vocalist that wasn't trying to be James LaBrie. He almost reminded me of the singer from Falconer in certain ways, where he's in a much, much lower register. Really, really cool stuff. I'll post something during the week, and I think you'll especially enjoy it.
Very cool. Yeah, I have not heard of that band either, so I definitely would be curious to hear that.
Anything good that you heard other than the Helloween?
Things came out. It doesn't necessarily mean I got a chance to listen to them, but I thought worth mentioning. One thing I did get to listen to that I happen to like quite a bit is the new single from Annette Olsen, formerly singer of Nightwish, who did a tour of duty in between Tarja and Floor, and she did what a lot of people say are two of their favorite Nightwish albums in Dark Passion Play and Imaginarium. And she did a solo album a few years ago that was really more of like an alternative rock album, not really so much of a metal album, but this album, I believe Magnus Carlsen is producing it, or he has songwriting credit with Annette on this track, and the song is called Parasite. And if you like anything that Magnus Carlsen's put out, and you like Annette's vocals, then this is going to be pretty much a can't miss for you. I think the song is fantastic, and it was one of my favorite things I've heard recently. So
yeah, Magnus Carlsen, you want to talk about an absolute genius. Obviously, we spoke about Heart Healer when it came out, some months ago, but everything he touches, everything he writes is no less than good, if not great, if not spectacular. This was a complete surprise to me. I had no idea she was recording a new album. I had no idea he was writing the new album. But what a good song. If the rest of the album is in a similar vein, it's going to be a really, really enjoyable listen.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you at all about that. And then the two other things that came out, actually, like in the last day or two, and I haven't gotten a chance to listen to it, but another single. We mentioned that Powerwolf has a new album coming out. They dropped a new single called "Dancing with the Dead," and Seven Spires, who we spent quite a bit of time talking about and interviewed two of the members of the band about this upcoming album, have finally announced the actual release of the album ahead of the two singles that had been released previously. And the album is going to be called Gods of Debauchery. And along with that came a single that was dropped today by the same name, along with a brand new music video. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing that. I mentioned last week that the track that they recorded with Roy Khan is just like this long, epic track that's definitely worth checking out. So I'm really looking forward to hearing another track. This would be the third single released from the upcoming album. And let me just, I would like to be able to give a release date. So let me just pull that up super quickly. And that album will be released on September 10th on Frontiers Records. So yeah, 16 tracks too. So it looks like it's going to be a pretty meaty album, and
this is another epic track, right? So they basically released two, I think, tracks in excess of about 8 or 9 minutes each. So when you put it together, that's a big chunk of the album that they're actually giving a taste of. So I'm assuming there's going to be some interludes on there and stuff like that. But it's funny, I had other people actually send me messages earlier today that the single had dropped and had asked me if I heard it, and unfortunately the day got away from me, so I have not. I'll probably take a listen right after we're finished, but obviously looking forward to it. I have very, very high hopes, and if what the messages that I've been getting are any indication, a lot of other people are looking forward to this as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think after speaking with them, it's made me even more excited to hear it, especially after revisiting their previous album and enjoying it as much as I did. I'm excited to hear their next release and how they follow up with something that was so well received, like their previous album was. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, and with that, let's get to the reason why we're here. As I said, a very, very interesting choice in one regard. This is the first time we're doing a double dip where we're going back to a band, but I think it's so fitting just because I don't know that there was ever an album that I was looking forward to more than this one, and I mean that literally, just because this was going to include obviously the current lineup and the classic lineup with Kai Hansen and Michael Kiske joining the fold. A very good choice, and I guess I'll start by saying, what did you think? Broad strokes.
It was absolutely phenomenal, and in order for an album like this to meet the expectations that the both of us had, which is, a 20 plus year love affair with this band, and being such a huge fan of both the Kiske era, especially the two Keeper albums, and then being fans of the Darius era that would follow, and also being fans of Gamma Ray. I mean, I just don't know that they could have done a better job. I just feel like this had such an opportunity to miss the expectation set for it, and they came out there and they just absolutely hit it out of the park. It's the best Helloween album. I don't even know. It might be the best Helloween album ever. I mean, time will tell. But the songwriting by everyone in the band is so strong. The layering of the vocals, it's not just like Andy sings one song, Kiske sings another. It's so much like there's Kiske heavy songs and there's Darius heavy songs, but they're a part of every track. Even if it's just as backing vocals, the guitar work with Wyke and Kai and Sasha all together. This could end up being our longest episode, because I have nothing but glowing things to say about everything about this album, every track, It's just, I'm flabbergasted at how excellent this album is.
So for me, and I think I mentioned this last week, I was really scared to listen to this because it wasn't even so much as hopes or expectations. It's just that I wanted it to be good. And part of me just felt like there was no way I was going to meet, let alone exceed expectations. I didn't know what to expect. When I first heard the Pumpkins United song, I didn't think it was the greatest song. I thought it was pretty good, and there were parts of it that I loved, but I just didn't know what to expect. And then conversely, they released the single for Skyfall, and I said to myself, this track is just, it got better with every listen, and I loved it immediately. I just couldn't believe what I was listening to after all these years. And then I listened to the rest of the album, and I'll just say this. I do, and I'll get into this in more detail when we talk about the song. I still think Skyfall is by far the best track on the disc, but I would also put that track up there with any song the band ever released. I thought it was that good, and I still get chills when I listen to that slow intro with Kisk's vocals. But I'll say this. Every other track on the disc is really good. Some are great. But to your point, the songwriting is just, they hit it out of the park. And it was the perfect blend of Darius and Kisk together with a touch of Kai in there that it just made for an enjoyable listen. And that's why I didn't listen to anything else this week, because all I wanted to do was keep playing this album.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I know this. I don't think I can ever go back and listen to the Skyfall edit now that I've heard the full 12-minute song. It never drags. It's a great song, and I'm totally with you that it's one of your favorites. I don't know that it's my favorite song on the album, and I'll mention that a bit later on. But oh my god, I mean.
Well, let's go. So a couple of things. Number one, as I was going through this disc for the first time, I was trying to guess who wrote the songs, and just because I'm such a fanatic of the band, I was pretty good with it. I can't say that I knew every person that wrote every song, but I was right about 75% of the time, which was pretty good. And I have some thoughts about kind of the way the album was structured and the fact that I thought it needed more songs by Marcus and Kai and stuff like that. But without any further delay, let's just get into it. The album starts with Out for the Glory, which quite frankly is like the perfect opener, if for no other reason than it's like a Michael Whitecalf classic. Would you agree with that?
This was the first song I heard on the album because it's the first song on the album. And what a way to start, because I was like, I'm listening to this album for the first time. I just recently got a pair of AirPods. I was like, I need to listen to this album playing like inside my brain. Like there can be no outside distractions. So this is like besides the edit of Skyfall, this is like my first, and Fear of the Fallen as well, which was the single. So this is like my first track on the album, and it just blew my socks off. I don't know if Wyke like was holding on to this, knowing someday that Kisk would come back, but this is like Keeper. Imagine a Keeper era, like with that pomp and circumstance that you get from an Eagle Fly Free, but with like so much better production values. This is one of the best songs that Wyke has written in a few years, I think. Absolutely fantastic, and I love that they just went for it and just said, we're dropping this track first, because I don't think a Wyke song has opened up a Helloween album maybe since The Dark Ride. And that even depends on which version of The Dark Ride you have, because Mr. Torture is the first song on some editions. So like usually Wyke's songs are kind of towards the end or in the middle, and so the fact that they just come flying out with this Michael Kisk heavy song, it's definitely more of a Kisk tune. I mean, this is, if you're looking to suck back in the Keeper era Helloween fans, like this first track is the perfect way to open this album. Just absolutely balls out,
right from the get-go. Like, just I was locked in from the very first track with this song.
Yeah, it was, and it was a very emotional start because it was really, it wasn't like they kind of eased you in. It was fast, it was heavy, and it was Kiss right away. And it was like, and I think that to me was why I got like emotional listening to it, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And I was thinking back to, Kiss unisonic material and the Place Vendome material, obviously his solo stuff and even the Avantasia stuff. I don't know that he's released a track this heavy, possibly ever. This might be the heaviest thing he's ever been on, this particular track. And to start the album with it, I was like, oh my God, you better strap in. Plus, I knew the two songs that were coming up later on the album. So I said to myself, you're 3 for 3 right off the bat. I don't know that I would have started with anything else. I just thought it was a perfect way to start the album.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting too, because I'm like, man, if they're going to start out with this, I mean, how strong is the rest of this album going to be if you can feel confident putting this song first? Obviously, you feel pretty confident that the rest of the album can follow this, and I think it does. But I love this song. It's, oh man, I'm not even sure if I've made my choice yet for my song of the week, so I'll just
maybe go back to this one.
Yeah, it might be this one, but I'm listening to each song as we're recording in a small earpiece in my ear, just to kind of jog my memory a little bit about specific portions of each song. So I will have a choice made by the end of this, but I will say "Out for the Glory" is definitely gunning for that song of the week title. So there's a little bit of drama there to build up during the episode.
Nice. And this track ends, and then it goes into this like slow guitar intro, and what we come to is "Fear of the Fallen," the track we already heard, that had been released as the second single, and this is like your quintessential Deris track. But what was interesting to me is his songwriting has improved so much over the years. And I know they brought him in during Master of the Rings because they liked his songwriting abilities. But my God, this might be one of his best songs that he ever wrote. What really, I guess, stuck out to me is that, again, I never really cared for some of his earlier stuff, but he's gotten so much better. And you finally got to hear this layering between him and Kisk, which shocked me because I never thought this would work. I thought it was going to be a train wreck, to be honest with you, because they sound so different, but somehow they make it work on this album and no clearer than on this track.
Oh my God. I mean, I probably listened to this song a couple of times when the single was released, but having listened to it a few more times, I would go as far as say as this is my favorite song Andy Deris has ever composed.
Yeah, and it got better with every single listen. And like, maybe it didn't pop for me as a single, but in between "Out for the Glory" and "Best Time," which is kind of a unique song in its own right, it's perfectly placed. And I agree. I'm not sure that the man has written a better song.
Yeah, it's. I when I first heard the single, I was convinced that it was like a Wyke tune. I can't believe. I mean, not to take anything away from Andy, he writes great songs, but I mean, to me, Wyke's always been the powerhouse songwriter for Helloween, and Sasha's has become such a great songwriter since leaving Freedom Call and joining Helloween, and I feel like he gets better with every album. But yeah, this is some of. I mean, honestly, all of the Deris songs on this album are really strong, but this is my favorite one of those four. And like I said, my favorite song I've ever heard him compose. It's just got such an epic sound. I love the beginning. The beginning kind of takes me back to like the acoustic intro to like "In the Middle of a Heartbeat" from the Master of the Rings album. Just like a very kind of Andy Deris style like acoustic guitar intro, and then just goes into another epic. This is another anthemic epic tune. And like you said, the interplay between the two vocalists is so well done. And
isn't it shocking how well it works? I mean, because when you think about, never mind the tracks, when you would hear Deris sing some of the old Keeper stuff, it was cool, and it was certainly a different take. but he's not Michael Kiske. And in many ways, if you were to listen to Michael Kiske sing, Where the Rain Grows, it would just be a little bit different. It doesn't have that gruff, that typical Derris, power behind it in certain ways. It's just a different type of sound. But yet here we are. You put the two together, and it's like magic.
It's almost as if they're both singing in the same key, but just in a different octave. And they're just like, it's interesting because I know that you listened to the interview that they both did with Chris Jericho on his Talk is Jericho podcast. And even they sounded like they were kind of surprised at how well that they've both not just sounded together, but how well they've been getting along, and how they're kind of like almost kindred spirits because they've both had this job as being the lead singer of the arguably the greatest power metal band ever. So it's really cool to see how like friendly they've gotten, and they have such a great rapport together. And I'm so glad that they didn't go the route of like separating them on these songs and actually putting them together and seeing what it would sound like, working together. And this song is one of the better examples of them really working together.
It would not have worked for me if they just split tracks. I don't think I would have enjoyed it nearly as much, because it would have just seemed like this thing where they each recorded 6 or 7 tracks, they threw them together and put out the album. But it was so much more than that. Not only was it surprising that it worked together, but the fact that they were amenable to doing it, as you mentioned, and the fact that it actually comes across as sounding really good. It was a true surprise. And kudos for Derris for writing this track. He did a phenomenal job. And then we transitioned into another track, which is called Best Time. And it's funny because I knew that Sasha wrote this song. I could just tell it was a Sasha track. What I didn't know was that Derris actually co-wrote the song with him. So I'm not sure who wrote what part. This is an interesting track. It's a shorter song, but I actually like how they trade verses here. I thought it was really, really fun. And then Kai doing the backing vocals, I thought was a really nice touch on this track. And I think it's one of the things I like most about it. Hearing Kai do backing vocals for both of them is really, really fun.
Yeah, it kind of takes me back to like when you'd listen to really old live material and you'd hear Kai doing the backing vocals, or even like the earlier Gamma Ray albums where Kai would do backing vocals for Ralph Sheepers. This song I feel like is going to be so much fun in a live setting.
Dude, I'm going to cut you off there. I literally have in my notes the same exact thing. This will be a surprisingly fun live tune. That's a direct quote from something I wrote to myself earlier this week. I'm glad you agree.
Yeah, I feel like even though he wasn't credited, I feel like Kai Hansen definitely had to have a part in this because the beginning of the song reminded me a lot of Rich and Famous by Gamma Ray. So nice. I'm wondering if maybe he wrote the opening riff, but like not the bulk of the song, so he didn't get song credit. But this definitely sounds like it has some Kai Hansen fingerprints on it because he only really has one like full length songwriting credit on this album, and that's Skyfall. And then he also wrote the 1-minute intro to Skyfall called Orbit. And I know you said you were going to mention, that Kai didn't do much, but I'm sure that he definitely, there were licks and there were, riffs and stuff that he had his hands in throughout the album. But this definitely sounds like I definitely got a Gamma Ray vibe from this song.
Yeah, I was really I like the song a lot on the disc, but I cannot wait to hear it live. I'm actually curious, and I'll ask you a little bit later on as to which of these tracks you think they'll actually play live and what you'd be most curious to hear. But we'll get to that. Then you get to Mass Pollution, which originally I thought it starts with like this dirty bass intro. I thought it was going into Dream Theater's the track from Falling Infinity, the one that escapes me at this point, but I thought it was going into that direction. But then it obviously gets into this really heavy riff. Derris starts screaming, and then I realized that this track, not my favorite song on the album, arguably the best Derris vocal performance that he's ever had.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of the bonus track from the Dark Ride, Madness of the Crowds. I'm not sure. off the top of my head, I can't remember if Darius wrote that. I didn't love this song immediately,
Same.
but every time I listen to it, I like it even more, and the chorus is catchy as hell.
Yeah, and he sounds like, and this goes back to what I was saying, he sounds younger here. I'm glad that this was like a standout track for him, because this is very much a quote unquote a modern Helloween track, as all these tracks are for all intents and purposes. But he just sounded young and vibrant here, and I loved it, because none of these guys are getting any younger. None of us are, obviously, but it just he sounded good here, and it made up for what otherwise was not my favorite song on the album. And I don't think it was the best Darius song. Obviously, I think "Fear of the Fallen" is going to take that. But it was an enjoyable listen for sure.
Yeah, I think this is another one that's going to be a really good live tune. I don't know. I'm listening to it right now, and I feel a little bit stronger about it every time I listen to it. It reminds me a bit more of like Darius's earlier work with Helloween. It's kind of like a throwback Darius tune to me. I really like the song. I really like every song, so that really shouldn't come to a surprise. But I thought this was, and actually, I thought all three of the Darius songs that came after "Fear of the Fallen," I didn't love immediately, but I've grown to like them quite a bit.
Yeah, I like them as well. Again, and the other two, just to mark them, is "Rise Without Change" and "Cyanide." I think "Rise Without Chains" might be the weakest track on the album, at least for me. Not that it's a bad song; it's just there's so much other meat on the bones here that it's hard to love every single track. But
no, it's not.
It certainly gets better with every listen for sure. Then we move into "Angels," which is by no means a ballad, but one of the slower paced songs on the album.
Yeah. So they mentioned in the Jericho interview that they did write a ballad, and they just found that it didn't, I guess, fit the album. So it's being saved for the next album. This is a song that Sasha wrote and with Michael Kiske in mind, and another awesome performance by Michael back with the band again. But another song where the chorus is just the hooks in all of these choruses, they just like get right. They just like hook you right in, like that's the word. I think we like mentioned like there almost every song on this album has been stuck in my head at a different point in this week. This one included. And I think that was either this morning or yesterday morning. I can't remember. This week feels like it's been going on for a month, but yeah, this was like, I just wake up in the morning and I just hear that chorus in my head. And again, like it really shows, I love that Sasha's like coming up to bat with the big guns, because, you know, it's so easy to get lost in this sea of, you know, Wyke and Kai and Andy and you know, these songwriting giants. And Sasha definitely holds his own here with this song. It's definitely more of a mid-paced tune with a couple of like slower parts, but again, just another great tune.
And what I can't help but notice, I think of Kiske's vocals, and he shines on this track. I have to wonder if by just not having a ton of miles on his vocals that he's able to do a performance like this, because the note that he hits at the end of this track, he sounds like he's 18 again. So I had to go back, and I went on YouTube and I was watching videos from like 1988, 1989, when he was, you know, obviously much younger. He's so, and quite frankly, even to this day, he's so good live, but I just don't think that he's got the miles on his vocal cords that some of these other guys do. And that's why he's still able to hit these notes that he's still hitting 30 years later.
Yeah. You know, not touring extensively for 20 years is definitely going to save your vocals from getting, torn up over the years. So I think that there's definitely something to be said for that.
Yeah, no question. We go into "Rise Without Change," which I mentioned earlier, another Darius track, much faster, and provides a very nice contrast, I think, to "Angels," because they really decided to speed it back up again. Phenomenal vocal harmonies at the beginning of the song. I actually thought that Wyke wrote it, to be honest with you. I was surprised that this was a Darius track. In certain parts, it actually reminds me of Before the War, just because of the way it's kind of speedy and stuff like that. Not my favorite track, but certainly a good, another good track in a string of many.
Yeah, this one is almost like the opposite to me, where like the verses are really strong. I feel like the chorus isn't as good as the rest of the song.
Sure.
But again, it's like, it's like, oh God, this song is only an 8 and all the other songs are 9s and 10s. I mean, it's another really good song. The chorus is definitely very Andy sounding, but I definitely hear that Before the War comparison, but this is a very very Helloween, like classic Helloween sound to me. I feel like I should point out overall, this album does such a great job of combining aspects of the Keeper era Helloween with the early Andy Darris era of Helloween with the current era of Helloween, which I think is impressive because it covers an awful lot of ground.
And while I think it does harken back to the older eras, I think that by and large it does have a very modern feel to it. But it works. I mean, it reminds me of like just the quality production and everything that you've heard on all the more recent releases. Certainly heavy. Right? There's parts of this album that are extremely heavy, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Daniel Lobel's drums. What a monster that guy is! I mean, he's unheralded because he's in an all-star band, but the guy, the guy behind the drums really holds this all together, and he does a phenomenal job. And what I found was interesting was that part of this album was actually recorded on Ingo's drum kit from the Keeper era, which is just like kind of sad, but really, really nice to hear.
Yeah, very cool to just kind of keep that sound as part of it, because I mean, even going back to when they announced this Pumpkins United tour, before I think they even had any clue that they would be recording an album, they announced this lineup of band members, and Ingo was in there as if he were still part of the band. So that's kind of a cool way of kind of keeping him as a part of the the proceedings. So
totally. And that's really like the first side of the album, if you will. The 7th track is Indestructible, which is the only Marcus Grosskopf tune on the album, but it's also one of my favorites. And it makes me yearn for more of his tracks because I think he's a really underrated songwriter. It's the bridge and the chorus on this album just gets stuck in your head. And I just keep thinking it's a fight. It's just a really good song. Kai adds a nice touch on one of the early choruses as well. It's a standard Helloween power metal track, but it's another track that's well done and one of the more inspired tracks I think on the album.
Yes, this is another track that is very Darris heavy vocally, and another fantastic job. This is a really catchy tune. This song leaked. So I had heard it, somebody had posted it to YouTube. So I'd heard it before the album came out. The quality was pretty bad, but, I could tell that this was going to be a good tune. And so, you have the chorus has, Kisk and Kai, but then the verses have Andy. It's just really a well done track, and it's a testament to what an underrated songwriter Marcus has been over the years, because he's always had the least amount of songwriting credits, and I'm not even sure he has any songwriting credits on the 2 Keeper albums outside of B-sides. But I mean, over the years, he always has like 1 or 2 songs on Helloween's albums, and they always end up being like some of the more memorable tunes. And this is definitely another one. And again, another song that I think is going to be a real banger in a live setting.
Yeah, it's going to be. I look forward to this. I think that's going to be one of the better live tunes, as opposed to the next track, which I'm going to go on record and say that Robot King will never be played live, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But this is a Wiki track, and just by looking at the name, you knew it was a Wiki track because it's got that Wiki cheese factor that we all love. But this track has phenomenal solos. Again, it goes back to the fact that I think that Daniel is just an absolute machine behind the kit. But I just don't see him playing it live, because this was his way, Wyke's way of telling Darius and Kisk, F you. The high notes that these guys have to sing through this entire song is ridiculous. And I've never heard Darius hit notes like this. And quite frankly, I didn't know Kiss could still hit these notes. It is not my favorite track overall, but there are elements of this song which are just mind-blowingly good.
This is Without For the Glory as I'm going to say my two favorite. It's going to come down to one of these two. These are my two favorite songs on the album. So
it's crazy. It's a crazy track.
No surprise that it was a Wyke tune. I didn't love it at first, and the more I listened to it, that chorus is arguably the catchiest chorus I've heard in forever. This song, it's a 7-minute, just Wyke's just these two tracks, just unbelievable output by him, and I'm not at all surprised, because some of my all-time favorite Helloween songs during the entire duration of the band have come from his songwriting, and these two songs, I don't even know what to say. I like this song is it, like you said, it features just such unbelievable vocal performances by both Andy and Michael, and that just, oh my god, the chorus is just so good. It's such an awesome song, and there's so many layers to it, and I think that's why I probably didn't love it at first, but now that I've heard it like 5 or 6 times, it's easily one of my two favorite songs on the album. And
you agree there's no way they're going to be able to pull that off?
No,
live,
there's
right?
no. In fact, I actually thought about that while listening to it. That I was like, they're not going to play this live, which is a shame, because it's absolutely just beautiful. It's just
if you go back into the archives, there are songs that I'd kill to hear live. I think Falling Higher on Better Than Raw comes to mind. It's one of my favorite tracks. They'll never play these songs live. I'm resigned to the fact that there's certain songs that you sing that song, you can't sing the rest of the set.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, it would be a shame to not bust this out live, but I can completely understand why they wouldn't. This was just, I feel like every time I listen to it, I just like it that much more. I mean, just an awesome track. Wyke still, he's my favorite metal songwriter ever. I really do say that in all truth. Like, he is just my favorite. Yeah, just my absolute favorite metal songwriter of all time. So I'm not at all surprised that my two favorite tracks from this album were written by him.
What did you think of Cyanide, which was the next Darius track, one of the shorter tracks on the album?
I didn't like it initially, and now I love it.
This is aging like a fine wine, I can tell.
And I think the fact that it had to follow Robot King and Indestructible kind of, it's like, but actually in retrospect, like, the placement is perfect to have like this crunchy ass song. I think this is great. Another song that Andy wrote, it didn't do anything for me initially, and now I love it, and again, put it on the list of songs that I think are going to sound kick ass live.
Yeah, another track I think that you have a very good chance of seeing down the line, just because it's got that crunch. It's an easily recognizable Darius tune, but he did a good job with that one for sure. And then you get to the last Wyke track, which is Down in the Dumps, right? And this is, again, you've got Kai doing leads in certain sections. It's got that, like, what I would call the Helloween gallop through the song, where you can just tell it's that crunchy, chunky Helloween. Again, I would just call it a gallop, for lack of a better term. I think that this was another inspired track by Wyke, and I love it. It's awesome solos, and the Kisk sections are just tailor made for him. One of the things he does on this track is he seems to be able to hold certain notes, in terms of like holding his breath, and then just change the pitch of the tune, which is something we really never heard him do before. I thought it was kind of nice. One of my favorite tracks on the disc, for sure.
This is not one of my favorite tracks
Really?
on the disc, and it's kind of surprising, because it's another Wyke song, and there are a lot of elements of Weiki's songwriting in here. I just think that the chorus is kind of bland. It's a really good song. Like I said, there are no bad songs in this album, but maybe I just need to listen to it a bit more. The vocal performances are great as they are in all the tracks, but
it could also be a bit of a fatigue factor, right? Because now at this point you're on the 10th track. You've been on a bit of a journey with like just all you've had to kind of endure with obviously the multiple vocalists and everything else. So by this point, you might just have a little bit of a fatigue factor. I found that there was one time that I listened to this where I couldn't listen to it straight through, so I stopped right before Robot King, right? And so I played the first 7 tracks, then I played Robot King later on, and I played the rest of the album. So Down in the Dumps was a lot fresher to me, and I loved it.
Yeah, I just think that the song is like really good, and then it gets to the chorus, the Down in the Dumps part, and it's just kind of like it's kind of an uninspired chorus to me, and it almost reminds me of, now mind you I don't agree with this opinion, but I remember somebody when Rabbit Don't Come Easy came out saying that like Sun for the World is like, this is such a good song, and then it gets to the chorus and the chorus is so blah compared to the rest of the song. And I mean, that's kind of how I felt about this. Again, I have plenty of time to change my mind, as this album is all of a week old, but it's probably my least favorite song on the album, in all honesty, because because of I thought the chorus just was kind of a bit of a letdown compared to the rest of the tune.
Well, if it was a letdown, things are about to pick up, because they have this short, we'll call it a intro track with Orbit, which obviously makes sense considering the name, and then you go into Skyfall, which undoubtedly the 12-minute version of this track is my track of the week. It might be my track of the last 2 decades for Helloween. I think it's probably my favorite track since Better Than Raw. Maybe my favorite track. I don't want to say ever. We're not there yet. I love this tune. I love everything about it. It feels like 4 minutes. I thought that what it made me yearn for again is just more Kai Hansen, right? Because I love his Gamma Ray stuff. Obviously, I love the Helloween stuff that he did early on in his career. He deserves an award for writing this particular track, because it is, I said to myself, why are they releasing such a long single? It makes sense. This song is everything you could have wanted about this whole reunion in 12 minutes.
Dragging the tail, watch sparklers and all the side.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have a Helloween, Keeper era reunion and not have a long epic track in the vein of Halloween and Keeper of the Seven Keys, and this certainly deserves to be mentioned in that high company, along with A King for 1,000 Years, which is another classic tune that was on the Keeper of the Seven Keys, the Legacy album, which, by the way, I had mentioned to you earlier today, that title should have been saved for this album. And I guess they probably realized there wasn't a name for this album that would make it worthwhile, so they just called it Helloween. But this is what should have been the Keeper of the Seven Keys, the Legacy, because this is the legacy of Helloween on full display. And this song, I mean, again, it's definitely this is showcasing all 3 vocalists. It's Kai at his best. Shades of Gamma Ray, shades of Keeper era Helloween. I noticed it took me till my 6th or 7th listen to the song earlier today to realize that Kai was saying Somewhere Out in Space at the very end of the song, which is throwback to an episode we did a few weeks ago from a Gamma Ray album that came out quite a while ago. So obviously, and the material, the songwriting, the lyrical material clearly is about life from outer space and things of that nature, extraterrestrial life, which is right up the alley of that album, Somewhere Out in Space. So this is almost kind of like Kai's little sequel to that album, but only with Helloween instead of Gamma Ray. And it makes me wonder if maybe Kai's songwriting is being saved for Gamma Ray. It certainly doesn't feel like that they're an active band, but I was also very surprised that he had one full song to his credit on this album, although it's very clear that he had his fingerprints on quite a bit of things going on here, as well as backing vocals and smaller vocal parts throughout. But this is definitely just Kai at his absolute songwriting best, and it really is just kind of a nod to those Keeper era albums where Kai and Waiki were just the songwriting dynamo, the two of them just writing classic after classic. Waiki busts out an Eagle Fly Free and a Dr. Steen, and then Kai comes back with a March of Time and an I Want Out, and Waiki's like, well, or Kai writes Halloween, and Waiki's like, well, I'll write Keeper of the Seven Keys. I mean, these guys as a pair, it was almost unfair to other bands that both of these guys were writing these out of this world songs for just this one band, and it's no wonder that Marcus didn't have any songwriting credits and Kisk had very few. And speaking of which, that was one of the only real complaints I had about this album, is that there's not even a B-side that was written predominantly by Michael Kisk, which I really enjoy. There are some songs that he wrote in the earlier era that he had some of, I guess I kind of call it like some of the quirkier Helloween songs, because his songwriting style was different than what Kai and Waiki were putting out. But you ended up with songs like A Little Time, and you ended up with You Always Walk Alone and We Got the Right, which to me are Helloween classics in their own right. And then in his his last few years with Helloween, he would go on to write Kids of the Century, which is one of my favorite Helloween songs, the fantastic and incredibly underrated ballad Your Turn, and then would go on to do When the Sinner and I Believe, and then finally Longing, which was his last track on a Helloween album for up until now. But he had some good songs, and his solo albums had some good songs, and so it would have been cool to hear him do something on here, and maybe he will on the next one. Maybe he just wasn't interested in doing that at this point, but it would have been fun to have a quirky song from Kisk that probably didn't seem like it fit with the rest of the album, but at the same time totally did.
Yeah, I agree with you. As much as I was saying, Skyfall was to me like just a perfect culmination of what this album was and what I wanted from it. There were a few things that it was definitely missing. It was definitely missing at least one Kiss track, quirky or otherwise. I wanted him to have a song on the album. And again, I know that they wrote a ballad. I would have liked to have heard a ballad on this album. I just wanted to hear one, whether they were doing the exchanging vocals or what have you. When I think about some of those classic Helloween tunes, I think about some of the ballads, and I just thought that this missed that. Even as a B-side, I would have loved it. And by the way, the B-sides on this album are pretty spectacular. Golden Times, for example, one of my absolute favorites. And I can understand why they didn't put it on the album. It probably wouldn't have fit, but as a standalone B-side, a really good tune. But I'm hoping that there's a ballad on the next one, and I'm hoping there is a next one, because I thoroughly enjoyed this for what it was.
Yeah, I mean, man, if the reviews have anything to say about it, then this might be Helloween's lineup for the next God knows how many years, because this album is being heavily lauded by everybody that's listened to it and reviewed it. I enjoy the B-sides as well. Golden Times is really a catchy tune. Sasha wrote this one. It doesn't really fit the rest of the album, I think, as well, but as a B-side, yeah, it's a really good tune. I also I like the other tunes as well. Save My Hide, which was an Andy song, and We Are Real by Marcus, which actually is like the most you're going to hear Kai Hansen sing on this entire album is on this Japanese bonus track. And also some of the versions of the album also have the Pumpkins United track thrown in there as well, which, you know, for completion's sake, might as well be on here because it's, you know, the same lineup. I really don't have anything super negative to say. I have like little qualms, but nothing that took away from my overall enjoyment of this absolutely phenomenal album. And I loved the previous album, My God Given Right. I kind of got into a chat with some other big Helloween fans that didn't think it was that good. I thought it was my favorite Helloween album in a long time. I thought that the songwriting was so good on that. And for them to follow this up with this, it's not just the fact that Kai and Michael Kiske are back in the band and on here. It's definitely part of it. But I mean, what really carries this album is just absolutely top flight songwriting by everyone involved.
It was 6 years, but they, let's put it this way. They left you wanting more after this album only because of how great it was. I don't, and we'll obviously rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 like we always do. But first, I want to ask you, what is your song of the week? It's time to pick one.
Man, it's so hard to pick between these two Waiki tunes. I'm gonna go with Robot King just because I think it's a little bit different. But I mean, I would recommend that anybody, listen to both tracks, but hell, listen to the whole damn album because it's phenomenal. But yeah, I'm going to say Robot King. But I mean, it's basically a tie between those two songs.
I totally understand. And it's interesting because I'm about to give my rating on this album from a scale of 1 to 10. I have to think that this is going to have the staying power that a lot of their other albums, if not all of them, do. So the number may come in artificially low, but that's just because I need to see where it is a year from now or 5 years from now or 20 years from now. It is an 8.75 for me. And the only reason it's not a 9 is because it's been out for 6 days.
Okay. It's a 9.5 for me because it's just that good, and it's going to probably get better as it ages like a fine wine, and as we get to hear these songs played live and they become part of the typical live catalog. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like it's pretty goddamn hard to make an album better than this. I mean, this, especially for me to love this album after only 6 days as much as I do. I mean, it's, to me, like, I think that this is, it's a 9.5, which with the potential to be a 10 at some point in time.
I'll be curious to revisit this, and I have a feeling we'll be talking about it again when we do our top 50 lists. I'm sure it'll be in both of ours or our top 25s or what have you. I want to see where it winds up, and although I think it's going to wind up at or near the top for both of us, I think it'll be a real testament to its staying power as we listen to other stuff over the second half of the year.
Definitely. That being said, I can tell you right now that I'm going to be I'm going to be revisiting this album pretty much regularly for the rest of the year and beyond. It's just that good. And I mean, I've been pretty, clear and pretty honest about the fact that this is one of my all-time favorite bands. So that part doesn't, hurt the love either. So
yeah, but you know what? In a way, it could, right? Because it's clear it's easy to be disappointed when they are one of your favorites.
Yeah, and like I said before, like this was a reunion that I've dreamt about since I was a teenager and was absolutely convinced was never going to happen. And so the fact that like it's been a week of me listening to it happening, and the fact that I still haven't seen the live performance, I am so excited. And as much as it was amazing that they came out and played 25 to 30 classic Helloween songs, I'm really looking forward to the next tour where we're gonna get all those classic songs, but all these new classic songs sprinkled in as well. And hopefully, they decide to dig into the deep tracks a little bit live and pull out some, this is an opportunity to pull out some, like you said, some falling hires or some really like, some songs that you just wouldn't expect to hear, or something, weird that Kiss, wrote back in the day on Chameleon. Just something. I hope that
you don't have to do a whole set of it, right? But just for the hardcore fans that have been wanting to see this stuff. And I have to say, in full disclosure, those Pumpkin United shows, and I caught 2 of them, both here in New York City. I've never seen a concert better than that in my life. I truly haven't. And I had always had certain concerts in my top 3. First and foremost was an Avantasia show I saw in Canada back in 2013. I thought it was just out of this world, and I referenced that during our Avantasia show. Then there was a Dream Theater show where they had recorded a DVD on the Scenes from a Memory tour here in New York, and they played for nearly 4 hours. That show is also in my top of shows that I've ever seen. But to see this band as tight as they were, and to hear all the classic tracks that you could ever imagine, wrapped in this 2.5 hour set, it was mind blowing. And I'll tell you, when they come back, I'm going to make a point of seeing multiple shows, because I could watch them do it every night. But to your point, I would love if they would just sprinkle in for some of the hardcore fans a couple of real offbeat tracks here and there, just to kind of keep you guessing a little bit. And just, like I said, when I saw the second show of 2 nights here in New York, they played Kids of the Century, and I lost my mind. I thought it was the coolest thing. Yeah,
if I was at a show and they just like, and to use an example of a song that they will almost definitely won't play, Mankind from the Pink Bubbles Go Ape album, which was written by Roland, which is probably why we won't hear it. But if they busted out a song like that, I would lose my mind. Totally. There's just so many hidden gems. I don't know how hidden they are, being that it's Helloween, but there's so many gems that are, outside of the Eagle Fly Freeze and the I Want Outs and the Dr. Steens that, that are, live staples. But man, this band's been around for so long, and this is this album is their 16th album. So, and a band that is rife with B-sides and bonus tracks that are just as good as a lot of bands' A-side material. So, there's just a plethora of song options that, they could play, 2 nights in a row and have 2 completely separate set lists, and it would be just as good to me. Not that, that would ever happen, but they have enough material that they could do, 50 songs in 2 nights and
not even scratch the surface.
Yeah. And both shows would be phenomenal.
Well, there you have it. We're looking forward to it. I think we can easily say that. But
yeah, so it was just okay.
Yeah, so you didn't like it, huh? Yeah. That'll bring us to next week. And obviously the first week of July, just like the first week of every month, is Request Week. And I think that we've got one from one of our longtime listeners, Daniel Lee. And I think it was a very appropriate request. And it's a band that I'm almost surprised we haven't done yet. What is surprising is the album from that band. And I say that because it's an album of a band that I love, but an album that I've never heard, namely Amorphous' Elegy, which came out in 1996. I will be honest and say that I have been a huge fan of this band for the last, I want to say like the last 10 years or so, and I went back and I've loved, I'd say, the last 6 or 7 albums that the band has done, but for some reason I never went back and listened to this particular album, so it's going to be new for me, but I certainly have an idea as to what to expect, and I'll kind of get into the reasons why I never went back or further into the back catalog and why I've only been a fan for about 10 years.
This is a band that I didn't think I would like when I first heard them, and I don't know what the hell was wrong with me, because they're so good. And seeing them live just made me appreciate them even more. Just an incredible live band. But, their last, like you said, for like 5, 6, 7 albums are just so consistently good.
Consistent. They are the model of consistency as far as I'm concerned.
I just think that they have mastered the art of just of just the hooks in their songs that grab you, and it's such his vocals too, just both the screams and the clean vocals. He's such a great vocalist. I mean, so I'm looking forward to this a lot, and it's an album I'm not familiar with, so this will be really great, going from like a band that I know I'm gonna lose my mind over with Helloween to a band I know that I like, but an album that I haven't heard. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Looking forward to this very much.
So as am I, and then I'll come back next week with a choice of my own. But until then, we hope you enjoyed some Helloween. We look forward to doing some Amorphous, and we will catch you soon. I will talk to you later, but I hope all is well.
You got it. I am going to listen to this album again tomorrow. Even though we recorded the episode already, this will not stop me from continuing to listen to this. I'm going to listen to this album every day until it gets to the point where I'm like, all right, I need to stop.
Well, I mean, you could have done that with Keeper too. You'd still be listening 30 years later, so for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, that's very true.
Enjoy, bud. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.